Hi friends, welcome to Knit 2 Cultivate 2. This is primarily a fiber arts podcast, but I get up to all kinds of shenanigans as I homeschool my kids. My name is Emily Wood and I live in Midland, Michigan with my husband Colin and our two kids, Elias, who's in 5th grade, and Stella, who is in 1st grade. Welcome back. This episode is exceptionally late and I have so many stories to tell about that. I have recorded episode 5. This is the 3rd time now. So I recorded episode 4 right before I was leaving to go to Legoland with the kids over spring break. So I had all that content to talk about. It's going to be a long show. Buckle up. But anyway, so I started recording. I gave myself an hour before leaving town a second time because I successfully did it once. I thought, oh, you gave yourself plenty of time. You'll be fine. I didn't. I kid you not. In the hour and a half that I had to record, what was this last week now? I don't even know. My neighbor's roof was being replaced. The shingles for our roof that is now replaced were being delivered, which was very loud. What else happened? I had my couch sideways for a play date and not back up against the wall so I could see out the window. And I am too distractible to do that. And my poor husband had to get something out of his bag and was so considerate, but it was a mess. So I got nothing useful, deleted it, came back in town and recorded again. Went to edit later that week, thought that I had less content than I realized. I did because there were clips missing. So this is try 3. I almost thought about putting, did anybody read the Wayside School books when they were kids? It's about, they're just little chapter books. Lois Satcher. Why do I want to say that? I don't remember the author. I'll put it up. But it was I think there are 3 books, and it's a school that was built accidentally on its side. So there's one classroom on each floor, but there's not a 13th floor. So I almost wanted to just make this episode 6 and forget about 5, but then I didn't. But anyway, I've got a ton to talk about, including 2 Patreon dye pots now. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to check my stuff. Ooh, the very first announcement is that we have over 100 subscribers. Thanks to Aquilla, the lefty knitter. I'll link everything below for her. We are now over 100 subscribers, so I'm going to do a giveaway. Comment in the section below. I'm going to give you 3 choices for the prize. So you can either pick, these are all bare. I will let you pick what colors you want them dyed out of my digital dye notebook. So I'll just email you a picture with all the colors and the names so you can pick what you want. And I will either dye a bare Knit Picks Felici worsted. I also have Knit Picks Capretta, which is a fingering. I have Bare Gloss Roving, which is a silk blend. It's a phenomenal blend. I love it. And what else? Oh, I could also do a unmercerized cotton weaving warp if you would prefer that. I have both fiber reactive and acid dyes, so I can do it either of those. So comment below which you would choose if you won. And I will announce the winner to that on the next entry. So the second time I recorded this, because of the delay, I was gonna give more time for the palette cleanser sock knit along. But what I'm really gonna do now is just roll it into the next quarterly giveaway. So the idea behind the first one was just something to cleanse your palette. The second quarterly giveaway, which you will have until June 30th, is going to just be a use your stash type thing. I started thinking it's spring cleaning time. We've been purging in our house. I have purchased way too much yarn this winter. And I just need to knit from stash. So, although I have new yarn to talk about, of course. That's okay. So we'll just like roll it all in to this next giveaway because it was premature to do that from the get-go. But Anyway, let's keep going. So then I will, because I don't have any entries. I know I have a few people that talked about socks they were knitting, but I didn't have any entries in the Facebook group. So I want to extend that, and I will go up and upload and change everything in the group or on the Facebook page. Lastly, I'm going to get to Patreon. So if you haven't checked out my Patreon page, I have one tier only. It's very minimal. We have a community that started over there. We're looking into getting forums and things like that started, but because of how Patreon is set up, I'm still researching how to get that started. But $5 a month, you get once a month an hour virtual knit night, access to my dye pot videos. I do one a month. I take a picture. I just dye skeins from that, and then I'll give 2 of the skeins that I dye away. So you will get a raffle entry for both of the skeins. So let me check. Our next virtual knit night is the 16th, April 16th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then from May on, not this month because I got behind, but from here on out, our virtual knit night will be the first Sunday of every month at 7:30 p.m. And I'm moving towards getting the dye pot content out at the beginning, but because of how I started it, I kind of got to the end of the month, which caused problems because my video was late as the week got away from us. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to last time I talked about the dye pot content for February. I'll put the picture up here. It was a total fail. All my colors were dark. Part of this had to do with when I added the acid. Part of it had to do with the fact that I was using fiber reactive dyes instead of acid dyes on wool. And you can use an acid and use cold water dyes on wool, but they don't always look exactly the same. And so you have to take that into account. So this is kind of one of the skeins that I got. So I started off with this brown and added celadon and I think it was coral. I'll write the names up if I don't have those right. And then I glazed it with Timberwolf, which is a dark gray. And it's just not glazed enough. So I went ahead and I have 2 skeins of it. So I went ahead and glazed over again to see if I liked it any better. And I reskeined it so the dye looks a little different in the skein. Oh, it doesn't show up amazing on camera. I'll show pictures because I have really good pictures of it in the sunlight. Yeah, it looks totally different than it does on camera right now. I'll put the pictures up. And I glazed over it again and I love it. It's so much better than the first time. It's definitely funky, kind of I don't know. Why do I always say industrial funk? And it's not even like a vibe. That's just something in my head, right? Okay. So those were from March. I'm saving this to ship to my friend at the same time as her second skein. And let me get to what I got this time. So I'll put the dye pot inspiration up here. I'm not going to talk at all about how I dyed this because that is all in the dye pot content, but I'm going to show you my version of it. We have purple pop, super bright, lots of purple pinky. This is like a grayish section in the middle that's not really showing up. And then I have this teal blue section. I have it reskeined. So there's the teal popping through, these bright purples. The purple itself is pretty variegated, which is what I was going for. So I'm happy with that. Really happy with how this turned out. The purple, I love how it streaks up into the gray and it's not, and the purple looks like it's kind of speckled on almost in places. It's not. But yes, so I love this. I also got 2, and these don't have zip ties on them, so I'm being careful. I did, sometimes when I put too much dye powder in a pot, or it's darker than I want, or I just there's extra dye that didn't exhaust, I'll use what I've heard called as a dye mop. And so I did that and have just a pastel tonal pink that I got. And then also this one, I was mopping up the purple pop, and then again the teal, because I added too much teal. These are not finished. These are just skeins that I think I'm going to keep in my stash for now, and then maybe later on I'll layer on them, or I'll use them. I don't know what I'll do with them yet. But for now, I don't have any plans on like adding to them, so I'm just going to keep them in stash. And they might go in a giveaway pile. Maybe somebody wants it with some extra speckles on it. That might be a good option for giveaways, but we'll see. But anyway, I was not really thrilled. I love the one, you just can't see it on screen because you can't see like any of the, oh, maybe if I get a little closer, you can see a lot of the pops of color come through. And it's very earthy, and then this one's just so vibrant, and I love this. This one might be my favorite. I am very excited to see how this one knits up though. And that's all I got for administrative stuff. That was a good bit, so I apologize, but let's get to some knitting. Okay, so my first finished project is the Gatan balaclava. Who is this by? Something Alexandra. I apologize, I didn't write it down. I'll put it up. This pattern was about $4.31 US, and I used Emma's yarn in the colorway Beauty Queen. I used a skein of 100% Super Merino, which was fingering weight, and then a skein of the mohair, which is 72% kid mohair and 28% silk. Super easy balaclava. I love the pattern. Both the yarns were dyed in the same colorway, the Beauty Queen. I don't know if I mentioned that. So I started and finished this since the second time I recorded. It's been a week since then, but I love it. I'm obsessed with it. I thought I would get another or a child size one out of this for my daughter, but I was like holding the skeins and looking at them, and I haven't weighed them yet, but I'll be surprised if I could get another out of it. I did make the larger size though, because I wanted it a little roomier. I wear buns a lot. I wear ponytails. And I just wanted a little extra room. So I did knit the large one, which could be why I'm not getting it. But I love this pattern. We are in Michigan now, and apparently we're going to need some better winter gear than we did in West Virginia and Ohio. So I feel like I will knit a few of these. I'm definitely going to knit one for the kids for next year. I found I think it's Knitting the Stash. I'll link everything. Knitting the Stash, I want to say knit another balaclava that I put on my queue. And the thing I really liked about it was this portion was not short ribbing. It was stockinette, single length, and it was like long and flared out so it would fit inside your coat. And I really like that. So I think I might try and engineer one because I love the pattern of this. But then instead of ribbing, maybe just do stockinette and have it longer so that it tucks in a little better. I loved that idea. Although I also think I'm just gonna knit that balaclava. It also had a really nice lining in it. So you technically knit like two of them and seam them together, which looked really cool. So I'll probably knit that one before trying to figure it out. But I feel like that would be useful in the wind. But otherwise, I'm really, really happy with this. I'm not gonna try and put it on. It will mess my hair up, which is wet and not done at all. So I'm not sure why I'm concerned about it. But yeah. Okay, so my next finished project is the Winter Rose Socks by Helen Stewart. It's about $6.37 US. Sorry, these are sitting in my lap weird. These were made out of Ella Rae Superfine Merino Heathered. It's a fingering weight sock yarn. I had left off and was on the second ribbing of the cuff. They are cuffed down. And now I have finished both pairs. Ends are woven in. It's a really fantastic pattern, and I brought sock blockers this time, so you can look at the pattern. Oh, amazing. Heel flap and gusset. It's kind of stretched funny right there. But Really like it patterned on top. I plan on wearing these actually with the outfit I have on, with a pair of brown boots. They're kind of just like ankle brown boots, but they're kind of a mustard brown, and these are going to be super perfect boot socks. I'm really excited. I'm definitely going to knit these again. I'm going to need a project in between. I can't do 2 full pairs of socks of the same pattern unless it's just a vanilla pattern, but I get too bored with the pattern. I need variety. Those of us with ADHD have to follow the dopamine, and doing the same thing over and over again is not giving us dopamine. But yeah, I'm really happy with these. I'm excited for the finished object. I really like the yarn. I think the yarn's gonna wear really well. It was a nice sock yarn, so I'm anxious to see that. But yeah, those are finished. Okay, so for my vanilla knitting, I usually have Rose City rollers always on my needles. Those are my beater socks that I wear all the time, everywhere, in tennis shoes, with leggings. I knit the medium size. There are 3 sizes. I always make the medium size, which is 64 stitches, and the small size for my son, my 11-year-old. So I gave him yarn for Christmas. I have 2 of these skeins of Felici. I wrote down, hang on, let's see. Totally lied. I feel like I want to say it was like, I know I've got it. I'm totally lying. It's probably like right on the other side of that. Anyway, I can't remember the colorway. I'll look it up. I have the ball band over there. But I keep wanting to say it's like whippersnapper, but that's probably completely made up. And if it is, where did that come from? But anyway, so he did not want ankle socks with this. I've knit him 2 pairs of the ankle socks. He wanted a tall pair of socks because he doesn't have a lot of them. So I just started with this. I'm going to do, let's see, the Rose City Rolls, which is a free pattern, so I'm not giving away anything, is just top down rolled hem. So the hem is stockinette, but then it's a heel flap and gusset. So you can use, I'm just using that as the pattern with the stitch counts and doing a cuff and a leg. So I've got a cuff done. Yeah, and I'm excited about that. I like when he makes choices, and he was very clear about what he wanted. So I'm excited to make them for him because he's really going to like them. But so those are my vanilla knitting. And honestly, my vanilla knitting has not been leaving the house that often. It comes out during game time, like game night, board games. We're really into board games. But otherwise, I've been knitting on other stuff, and just, I always think it's really arrogant when I take things that need thought when I'm going to be talking, and it is. And usually I make mistakes, but I've been really into my other projects right now. Okay. Another project that I did not have on my needles when I saw you last are the Modern Mocs by Becca Knits, which is $6.99 US. I'm using Knit Picks Simply Wool bulky weight. This is the yarn that it calls for. I'm using the color Wilhelmina and Wendy. It calls for Wilhelmina, but it called for something else. I think it was a lighter color than what I have, but they didn't have it, so I just got this. But I'm really far. This construction, I would not call this a beginner pattern. It's short rows, which aren't hard, but there's a lot going on. Even I had to go back and rip sections out, and I consider myself a pretty advanced knitter. So, yeah, but it is a great pattern. Don't get me wrong. I just would not call this a beginner. It's definitely an intermediate pattern. But let's see if I can show. So you start with the sole. It's like a double knit sole. It's so thick and squishy. I'm so excited. And then you come around and you do a front lip. This lip will like fold over. And then I have the back. And you can kind of see how it's gonna work. There's an I-cord edging that's in the contrast color, which is the darker color. So I need to like work my way around, and like it'll be like a split seam here. It's really hard to see. I'm glad I put a picture up so you know what I'm talking about. But it looks like a moccasin. It looks like it's gonna work. We'll see. And this is Eco Wool, 100% Eco Wool. Knit Picks Simply Wool, bulky weight. I know I said the colors. Did I say anything else about it? 100% Eco Wool. I don't know what that means. It is pretty rustic. I mean, these are slippers. They're on your feet. It doesn't matter. But I'm not sure I'd want a sweater out of it. I guess like a jacket sweater would be good, like an overcoat. But I don't know. It's a little on the rustic side, which is fine. There's a place for that. Slippers. But anyway, I'm really happy with these. They're really soft and squishy. The knitting's been enjoyable. It does take a lot of thought though. So not a to-go knitting. Hopefully I'll have one finished next time. I think I will. This is probably the project I'm most motivated to work on right now because I'm fascinated by how it's being constructed. Everything else I'm doing, I already kind of know the ins and outs of what I'm doing. It's not any new technique, and this all feels kind of new. All right, so I have another project that's almost finished that wasn't on the needles. I have a sweater. I have been working on a design, not a lot, just a newer design. And I'm gonna put up the inspiration picture for the design. And I went to my local yarn shop to get a present from my mom, which I talked about the first time I recorded this. Now I don't have the yarn to talk about, so it sucks. But I also bought myself a few things. I bought Kelborn Woolen Scout in 5 different colors to try and kind of recreate this. The colors were off and I was like, well, I'll try it and see. The swatch did not work. Oh, actually, where is it? Hang on. I have the swatches. I swatched it. Oh, I swatched it for gauge so I could do the gridding of the design. And it was a lazy swatch because it was just to get a quick count. Because I wasn't at the knitting stage. I was still at graph paper in an app phase. And the swatch is so soft and squishy, and it's a sweater. I need a sweater out of this. But it also wasn't quite what I was going for with the design. I really want to go more peachy, not coral. So I decided to look for a pattern to knit with the colors. So let me show you the colors I got first. I got ocean heathered. I have coral heathered. I just have a bear. And let me see where the navy is. And navy heathered, which I don't have a ton of left. So the pattern I found was a soldotna by Caitlin Hunter. I knit the Bernie Mitt sweater, which she made off this pattern. So I have knit this pattern with a different design on it, but I knit the same size that I did. Except, as you might recall if you saw one of my first episodes, I did not switch from my ribbing needles on accident, and so the sweater does not fit at all. I was getting nervous with this one. First, let me show you, sorry. Let me find the back. Yep. Ooh. It's not blocked at all, so the ribbing comes up. But here it is. Oh, I don't know. Let's see if I can or push it out. It feels so short when I hold it up, but when I put it on my body, like it's not. It is cropped and right where my waist cuts. Oh, I love it. It looks like it's a little snug. It's this row, this white, they're not diamonds, they're kind of like a V, but was snug. And everything else is good and fits really good, and it's not too fitted. I will say it is more fitted I'll put a picture up here, but I plan on wearing this with a dress just like she does in the pattern pictures. And Rachel from Wool and Spinning always sets her dress form up with like 2.5 inches of positive ease to account for layers. And I didn't even think about that. So it was a little tight gauge wise, but I had 4.5 inches of positive ease built in. However, about half of that ends up being like the clothing underneath it in the dress. So it's not as baggy as I had hoped. But it's adorable. I love it. But it does feel like it's really short. But once it's on, it really does hit. It's a cropped sweater, so it's supposed to be. And I have a million ends to weave in, which I've been slowly working on. And I have one sleeve cuff done. I did go ahead and do I did an Italian cast on and a tubular bind off. And I need to do the pickup or put the stitches on to do the ribbing on this. It's like 6 rows. It does not take long. But I'm trying to slowly get through the ends because I've got, let's see, so many that need to be done. And I hate weaving in ends. In color work. I like weaving in ends on stockinette. Hate it in color work. But anyway, I love this. I am laughing at myself though because I literally, I'll show you right now. I bought a spinning chair, which is basically this navy. And I'm gonna talk about it in a minute in the spinning section. It's got a hair on me. And I just bought a nugget couch for my kids, and I got the starfish color, which is literally like this coral. And I really do stick to a color scheme, but I really love it. I really thought that I was worried about this section, the arrows, because of the two colors, the contrast between the coral and the bear, but I think it turned out great. I'm super happy with it. So hopefully that'll be done next time, and I'll have some pictures in the dress I plan on wearing it with. But I love it. Okay, the last thing I have to talk about, I'm really excited about. I was at Stranded Yarn and Coffee last night. Friday night, the Yarnies group meets up. It was a huge group this week. And I was in the yarn shop and made a passing comment about the Plymouth homestead, which every time I pass, I have to like just look at and touch and feel, right? It's the softest and it's gorgeous, and the tweed, I can't. And the owner was like, well, if you have any time, I could use a shop sample. Oh, do I have time? I get plenty of knitting done during school. And so I agreed to thrilled to agree, agreed to knit the epernay by, I don't know if that's how you say it, E-P-E-R-N-A-Y, epernay by Thea Coleman. It's $8 US. It's a kind of cropped quarter-length sleeve cabled sweater, and I'm knitting it with Plymouth Homestead tweed. What color is this? Plumberry. 90% wool, 10% Donegal. Ooh. 100 grams, 194. It's an Aran weight. Oh, I'm obsessed with this. It's a deep royal purple tweed. I am so into the jewel tones. That's my jam. So I love this. And I'm so excited to cast it on. I'm gonna have the swatch done and, or I'm gonna work on the swatch this week and wash it and bring it in Wednesday when I go for knit night. Show her and see. It's not a great even yarn substitution exactly, so we need to make sure it's going to be a good fabric. But I am so excited, and I'm so excited that I get to talk about it. I made sure to ask that I was allowed to talk about the whole thing. But yeah, I'm really excited to do that. So hopefully I'll have a swatch to show you next time with that. All right, so I do have some spinning to show. I bought these huge wool rounds from Zylinger Wool. Talked about them on the first episode. I'll put a picture up. And I started spinning them. It's a pin drafted roving. Started spinning them, and I got this very uneven. It's a wool blend, and it's very cheap wool. I got them for $10 for 6 ounces, and I knew that obviously for the price. That's what I was getting. But I had a new wheel. I love like pin drafted roving because I like spinning fingering weight or lace. That's what I use. Because I weave, and typically fingering is what I knit with, and lace is what I like to weave with. So, yeah, anyway, so I was just spinning. I knew this was going to be really, really rustic, earthy. It was the color. I just loved the color, and I was like, I'll figure something out with it. So I'm going to do either a bin, like maybe a storage bin or a basket for my house, or just like a project bag, or like a produce bag or something. And I have 2 of the 6 ounce rounds. I got 2 full bobbins of singles, and I should get a third from the round. So I'll have 6 bobbins total. And then I have 2 skeins from each of the 2 bobbins. So that's 6 skeins. So I'll have like 6 skeins of this. I can't remember how much it was. I wrote it down, but I'll put it up how many yards it was. It wasn't a ton. It's very lofty, so it filled the bobbin faster than I expected, to be honest. But I'm happy with it. I am taking a break from this spinning project. There's not much to it. So, and because it's not going to be a consistent yarn, I'm not worried about taking a break. And like, usually I'm a big stickler on finishing your project on your spinning wheel, or at least like all the singles or all the plying. Well, if you're plying, you're done, but finish all of that part of it so that for consistency. But because this is so uneven, I'm just not worried about it. The second spinning project I have, a while back, I did a bunch of like dye samples, where I was playing with mixing the dye myself from pure primaries. So I did a few, I think it's in my beginning video, the dye triangle, and that was all dyes I personally mixed. And I did a bunch of them. And so I have a ton of these 1 ounce wool bundles. And I think these are Cormo, but I don't remember because it really was just whatever bear I had in my stash at the time. I was testing colors. So I have this beautiful sea foam that I'm spinning now on the Matchless. It's set up in double drive. So I'm excited about that. You know what? I pulled out, do I have it up here? No. I pulled out these bats that I have been hoarding. I did not purchase these bats, so I know nothing about them. There are no labels. There are 3 of them. I got them, when I got my first spinning wheel, I bought it used, and I came home with 3 trash bags of wool. Dyed wool, like good stuff. So, and that was just like she kept throwing things in. And this was out of that. So she either purchased it or blended it herself. I don't have any concept of that. But I've been saving these. And I opened them up to spin them the other day at a play date. And I was so frustrated because the silk was not blended in well. It was very, very clumpy on the bottom, and you couldn't see that from the folded bat. So these have been sitting in my stash, and I haven't touched them because I thought they would be so amazing, and I pulled it out and it was an awful experience. And so I immediately took it off my wheel. I was like, that's not what I wanted. Put it back in stash for now. But that was so disappointing. But it made me realize, Aquilla from the Lefty Knitter talked about this not probably not her latest episode. I'm still like a week behind podcast. It was probably last week. She was spinning a loop bump that she had been like hoarding, and or not, maybe not, I don't know, I'm probably exaggerating, but she was saving it because she didn't want to use it like and mess it up. And I get that way totally, but this was a very big lesson in sometimes you can hoard things and be excited to use them, and it isn't even what you thought it was. Like, this was a huge lesson, and I hoarded that for no reason. Use the stuff you want to use. Yeah, and another thing is that I want to point out is with your hand spun, honestly, when you knit it, it hides a lot of the inconsistencies, especially if you use garter. Andrea Mowry, I have no concept of how long ago it was, but she showed one of her first hand spun, I think she made into a sweater or into something, and she showed the knitted item. And it really does hide the inconsistencies more than you would expect, or at least more than I would expect. So I totally agree. Jump in, do the spinning, use your yarn. You'll be able to find a pattern. And art yarn is a thing. Like, you can do heavy textured yarns. I actually want to get into that eventually. I have a hard time letting go of control. And in art yarn spinning, you have to do that. But back to this. So this is the one I have now, and I have 4 more in this bundle. I have an orange, just a Kelly green, and a really nice purple. And I'm gonna spin those. I do know if anybody goes to the Yarny meetup on Friday, a few of us were talking last night about bringing our wheels if it's not raining next week. Now that it's getting warmer, we can bring our wheels on Friday. So I think that's what I'll do, is bring some of these. I like that they're short projects that, and I'm just gonna chain ply them. It'll be a scrappy project, or mini skeins or something. I have no plan for these other than they were a dye project, and now I have them to spin. And so I also will say my matchless is, a month old maybe, and I still do not know the wheel. I feel like I'm still adjusting more than I have to on my e-wheel, and then I'm still kind of learning the quirks. I love it. It spins so smoothly, but I'm still in that learning curve. So I wanted projects and that's why I put the bat away. I need a project that's easy and easy to draft so I can get to know the wheel. And this wasn't doing it because it was so hard to spin the inconsistent, short, staple fiber. There was a lot of stopping and starting, but I'm glad to get that out. And I think that's all I've got in spinning. Okay, so I'm quickly kind of going to go through some of the stuff that's been going on with us lately. What we've been doing, where we've been, but there was a lot of it last time I recorded, and we've been to Columbus since then. So I'm really going to try and zip through this. But the first thing I wanted to mention is that I've been looking at fiber festivals, and I'm sure as I've shown you 2 spreadsheets at minimum already, you're not going to be surprised when I say I started a spreadsheet. But we are trying to organize like our summer and like the trips and concerts and things we want to see. Because last summer we did no planning and we did very little. So we want to make sure to do some planning this year. And my husband has about 2 more weeks of the school year. So we'll get some planning done. We have a little time before like it gets warm apparently in Michigan because it's flurrying today. So anyway, we went to Legoland. I just wanted to briefly mention this was at Auburn Hills, the outlet, Great Lakes Bay. Oh, I'll put it up here. But it's in Auburn Hills, and they're all connected. The Peppa Pig play area, the Sea Life Aquarium, and the Legoland Discovery Center are all connected, and they were all half off for homeschool week, which was phenomenal. So we met some friends that actually live about 45 minutes from us, but they were going to go, so we met them there, and the kids got to meet for the first time. I knew the mom briefly. So that was good. And then let's see, what else did we do? We went to Columbus. My mom still lives in Columbus, and we went and saw friends. And we went to Topgolf, which was really fun. I don't know if you've done that, but my kids loved that. That was fun. And it kind of was like an alternative to bowling, which was interesting. A nice activity to do in the winter, shockingly. We don't have it one near us, but Auburn Hills, which is where the Legolands was, has one. And then we went to 16-bit. If you're in Columbus, there's a few locations, I think, now. Don't quote me on that. We went to Dublin. It was in Dublin, and it is pretty much a bar with vintage games all over, and all the games are free. They also had consoles on the wall too, where you could play games. So my friend and I sat and got drinks, and the boys, my son and his best friend, who is her son, walked around and played games. We then walked right down the street to the North Market location that I don't know how long ago they opened it up, but since I moved, in Dublin. And so it's a much smaller version of the downtown North Market. If you're in Columbus, I highly recommend visiting North Market. It's indoor market space downtown. And it basically is just a bunch of stalls with restaurants and amazing food. The best red curry I've ever had, I got there. And this is a smaller location. I would say there were like 10 places to eat. But I got Pit Barbecue, which is out of, I instinctively want to say Akron, but I think it said Cleveland, and I'll link it. Pit Barbecue, which was phenomenal. I had not been there, or I had not had that. And then the boys got pizza, and so we got to hang out with them, which was amazing. And let's see what else. Then we went to Otherworld. This was also really cool, although it was in a pretty sketchy place. Not the area was sketchy, just that it was in an empty strip mall that was abandoned except for this one open place. And because it's like a dark, artsy experience, you just walk, it just says Otherworld, and it has black curtains, so you can't see inside at all. So a little odd, but it's been around for a while now, since we've been there, or lived there, so I knew it was fine, but it was a little sketchy. But it was so cool, and I'm hoping it'll let me play the videos, because I have a few cute little videos, but it was really neat. I kind of was afraid Stella would be nervous, because some of it was pretty creepy, weird, and it's all dark, and everybody had a blast. My kids loved it. We thought it was so cool. And it was just one of those trippy experiences, right? There's a room that had lights and mirrors, and Stella did run into one of the mirrors, so it did its job, right, of confusing you. Oh, she was totally fine. No tears. But it was, when you think about it, that's the point of the lights and mirrors. Anyway, so that place was super, super cool. There was even one room where when I took a picture, it looks like I took a picture with a filter, but it's just how the lights are in the room, and it makes it look like you're in an old newspaper, a black and white newspaper, or a black and white picture. That was pretty cool. I found a loom. I thought that was really cool too. I identified it like up against the wall and made my kids like take pictures in front of it. They're like, we don't care about this little all, Mom. Yeah, I know. And there was some yarn. It had some mohair in it, but I couldn't see. I took a picture, so I'll put it up somewhere. Yeah, so that was really fun. Oh, what else do I have? So much of this is not true at all. We, for the co-op, really started doing a park series. None of our like courses or extras will be starting until the fall. So we have plenty of time to work through all those details. None of us know what we're doing, so that's helpful. But I tried to start the park meetups, and it's Michigan. So the first one I had to reschedule because it had freezing rain. There were icicles everywhere. So I moved it. and it snowed on that day. And then the next day, it snowed again for the second one I tried to start, and then rained on the day I had rescheduled. So we moved to an indoor place. Anyway, Rachel from Wool and Spinning, one of the community members, made a comment about how Michigan spring starts in mid-June. And I know that's gotta be an exaggeration, but as I have not yet had a Michigan spring, I'm a little nervous. That's late. So we'll see. But yeah, anyway. But that's going well. Let's see. We had some issues with our house. We've had some issues. We're getting solar. We needed a new roof. We needed a new furnace. We needed a lot of stuff that made this a really good choice for us. And our roof got replaced last week, but we were having some issues with permits and things like that. Just administrative stuff with the solar. And then we found a mouse in our basement, which is normal. Nothing weird. We've had mice before. Not here, but we've had mice before. But it was just dead in the middle of the floor. So we were giggling about it. Is this a canary in a coal mine situation? Do we need to be concerned that the small mouse died? I don't know. But so we were dealing with that, and that was part of the reason that the dye pot content from March got pushed back, was because I couldn't really hang out in my basement with the kids with traps out. So that pushed that a little bit, and then we had some sickness hit our house, and that was just a lot. But the other thing was, in the personal learning, I returned all my books. I made a list of the ones I wanted to read, like made a note of the ones I wanted to read again and added them to my queue, but nothing was keeping my attention. So I returned it. I got the book Wild and Free, which I had been recommended. It's a book about homeschooling. I did not write the author down. I'll put it up. But I've read the first 2 chapters of that, and I have a few things I want to talk about from that. But I'm giving myself grace. I am so hard on myself with books and things like that. I'm not kidding. I was an adult before I allowed myself to not finish a book. Like, I would suffer through reading a book to get to the end. And it makes no sense. But I recently, within like probably 5 years, if I'm at 25% in and it's not keeping my attention, or if I just can't focus, it's okay to put it down and just pick a new book. Life is too short to do things you don't want to be doing. Or at least in your free time. This is a hobby. Like, I don't need to be using my free time to do things I don't want to be doing. But this book has been fantastic. So there are quite a few things I wanted to just kind of touch on that might be educational about homeschooling. So let's see. The first thing is a quote by John Holt, who is a homeschooling guru. I can't remember what term they used for that. But it goes along the sentiment of, there seems to be an unspoken idea in instruction of the youth that people who start the fastest will go the farthest. But that's not only an unproven theory, it's not even a tested theory. The assumption that the steeper the learning curve, the highest they will go is also unfounded. If we did things a little differently, we might find out that people whose learning curves were much slower might later go up just as high or higher. Whew, that was a long one. Okay, so A, I completely agree with this. B, I think all the research completely agrees with this. The more we learn about children and child development, the more we realize that pushing even education, pushing things like potty training doesn't work. You need to give them time to be ready. And the same can be said as it with reading. And that has been my experience with my daughter. This is also, I wanted to use this to point out another thing about ADHD as well. I was an undiagnosed neurodivergent adult until I was 30, when I was doing the testing and going through the research for my child. I took a parenting class at the Nationwide Children's Hospital in Columbus. It was phenomenal. It was called The Incredible Years. Super recommended. They also have a program designed for schools. At the time, my youngest was in daycare while I was in grad school, and I told her classroom about it, and they got the instructor to come and do it with her daycare class. It's amazing. It's a gentle parenting approach. It's specifically designed for ADHD children. The program hasn't been changed since the 70s. The videos were all super retro because it works. It's just proven, and it works. Phenomenal. That was a really big side step. I apologize. But the point of this is I have so much negative self-talk. I was in my undergraduate degree getting A's in advanced math classes. And I would make comments about how, well, I'm really not that smart. It's just because I know I always meet someone to talk to and work through things with and talk through things with. And I had a much slower learning curve, I feel, than other people did. And a lot of that has to do with just being undiagnosed. If I had known anything about this, I would have been able to manage it, which is why diagnosis and representation is so important. But this very much resonated with me. In fact, I will be absolutely honest with you. The first time I ever realistically in my head said to myself, you are a smart person, and believed it, was when I was in grad school, which is bananas. I was 31? So yeah, anyway, the self-shame and all of it that goes along with ADHD, especially when you're undiagnosed and have no concept of what's wrong, just that something is wrong, really made this resonate for me. My son and daughter are completely different. My son taught himself division in kindergarten. My daughter is still practicing addition and subtraction, and she is at her level. She is at the level she needs to be at. She is the average level, but my experiences were wildly, wildly different. And anyway, I'm getting off track on that, but I really liked that quote. Another thing it read was that Plutarch said that education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire. This was one of my biggest reasons for homeschooling, or one of the reasons I like it the most, is reclaiming a wonder for education, reclaiming a wonder for learning, and just making it a part of your daily life. Because if I do that now, they'll do it growing up. They'll continue reading in their spare time. They'll continue wanting to ask questions about the world around them. And that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted to reclaim that childlike wonder, not only for my kids, but for myself through this process of homeschooling and educating them. And that's kind of what the idea behind the personal learning was, is I feel like I come at information. I'm so fascinated by so many topics, and I just want to learn it all. I want to hear about all of it. And I love that quote so much. And let's see what else. So this kind of goes back into the making education a part of your life. But it says, so much of the modern day childhood is designed to assist parents as they work longer hours to pay bills, also to allay fears that they're doing everything possible to help their kids succeed. So things like extracurriculars and things like that. So this again, when we landed into homeschooling, because we were public school people, I was the PTA vice president for 2 years. We still are massive public school advocates. If my son comes to me tomorrow asking to go back, he can go back. And that's totally fine. But one of the things we had to do was kind of deconstruct education when we were trying to decide what makes sense for our family. And part of that was going back to the reasons behind how things are structured. Like, why was public school a thing to begin with? Well, you had parents who weren't educated at all and were working long, laborious hours, and they did need a specialized teacher. Or going back to that, and then now what it is parents are working and they need it to be longer days and they need it to be this and that. And just, again, this isn't a criticism, it's just breaking it down so that we can understand the basis behind it. And so this quote, or this portion, really rang true to me from the conversations we were having. It also made me think about the pressure behind hobbies that we put on kids with sports and all of it. I mean, my children are signed up for soccer that starts in a few weeks. I am not criticizing sports, but it was something to think about, right? About how we approach things with our children. It also brought, just like I said, reclaiming their education and their wonder for that. It's also about reclaiming childhood. So reclaiming childhood from what it needs to be to work in society. I don't have to build our day around what works for other people. It's just about what works for my kids. But it's also about reclaiming childhood for yourself, reclaiming that play-like attitude and approach, and being around your kids or being around children all day. I don't know the point I was going to make. I'm sorry. I totally lost it. But anyway, reclaiming childhood in addition for yourself as well. Then I want to get into another interesting thing, because this is an interesting thing that I don't think a lot of people who don't have experience with homeschooling understand. So it's not like I'm putting on a mom hat and then taking it off and now I'm teacher, right? Homeschooling isn't like being a teacher. Homeschooling is an extension of parenting. It isn't, and that's, you don't have to be an expert educator. You have to be an expert at educating your child. You are an expert at your child. You understand their nuances better than anyone. And that's what you need. And I think that's a piece that's typically, I think it's just something people don't think about unless they've had experience with homeschooling. But so some of the things I want to say about that. So one of the quotes was that even on their most challenging days of homeschooling is really just an extension of parenting, and to trust your natural instincts. Even when you don't know what the answer is with your schooling, if all else fails, you know how to be a parent. You know how to parent your kids. You know what they need. And you can always, if you're struggling as the homeschooler, you can always take breaks and do some of the other stuff. Like maybe you do some documentaries for a week or two instead of your actual curriculum as you figure out what the next step is. And I use curriculum, but no, not everyone does. Let's see what else. But I think that's a really good point, is that it's not like going through different roles. Our school day and parent, it's all rolled into one. But I definitely feel like, and especially since I have taught courses, although college students, but still I have taught classes. It's not like teaching a class. It's literally just like parenting, more in a different way. But basically what it boils down to is homeschooling is about relationships. Homeschooling is about the relationships that our family have built. It's about supported socialization. It's about, I should explain that. Supported socialization absolutely is not intended to mean that I supervise their socialization at all. I am not a helicopter parent. I absolutely want hyper-independent children. But what I mean by that is they aren't socializing with whoever's around them like kids are in school. I remember in school, my group of friends would kind of, overlap and blur each year, especially in elementary school, because it was who was in your class, who are you around that you talk to on those days. Whereas my kids might socialize a little less, but they're always socializing with their friends. They're always socializing with people they connect with and are building active, good relationships with. It's not acquaintances. It's real relationships that last. In fact, that's my favorite thing. One of my favorite things about my son, he can make a friend anywhere, but he still talks to his friends from Ohio all the time. They play games online and they'll have Zoom calls going so they can chat and talk to each other at the same time. They still interact. He still talks to tons of people that he doesn't live near. And if he were in public, no, I don't want to say that. I'm going to take a step back. But when I was growing up, I remember getting to college and not knowing how to keep in touch with anybody because I had never had to do it. All my friends were just physically there in the same place as me. And so I lost touch with a lot of people. And I just wish I had known that. But my kids are now doing that. They're learning that now instead of later. And that's part of it. They're learning the real life skills on how to function because that's how their day is currently structured. I think that's all I got. Homeschooling is about relationships. I probably went off on a tangent. I had a lot to talk about. It's a really good book. And I feel like I should reiterate again, we love public school, not the point of homeschooling for us. It doesn't have anything to do with the content that's being taught at the school. It has nothing to do. This is just what works for us. We enjoy being around each other. Our relationships and my children's relationship has grown so much in the past 2 years. It's amazing. And we just personally find benefit to it. But again, we are also of the mindset that we are not in charge of our children, that we are stewards of their childhood, that we are taking care of them while they can't take care of themselves so that they can make their own choices. So when it comes to school and what we're doing next year, when my son goes to middle school, I don't have an answer to that. We might be homeschooling. I hope we are. I think we will. My son does not want to go back. I talked to him about it the other day. But we will sit down with him and we will give him the information he needs to be able to make a choice on his own. And we'll give him, you know what, if this were me, this is what I would choose. Or honestly, this is what I kind of think you should choose, but the choice is up to you. We can give him what we would think and help him work through that. But ultimately, it's up to him. And my husband and I both had public school educations and have turned out fantastic. So he will have the support wherever he chooses to get educated. Whew. Sorry, I think I got on a soapbox and that was so less cohesive than I had planned it being, but that's okay. Anyway, if anybody has questions about homeschooling, I'm new to it. I'm not even remotely claiming to be a professional. But it is interesting to me because a lot of the things about homeschooling are things I've already been doing research on with gentle parenting and attachment parenting and all of it. So it's not new information. It's just about something different. Like I'm now learning about what it means to do these things for a different age, whereas I was doing it for toddlers before. Yeah. But yeah, I'd love to answer questions, but I don't claim to be a professional or anything. But we are enjoying it. So I am going to end it here because I really don't have too much more to talk about. And this was a lot. Thank you for joining me. I'm pretty sure I covered everything. But thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.